A month after Kyrie Irving posted a link to an anti-Semitic documentary, the basketball player lost his deal with Nike. The swoosh signed Kyrie in 2011, and they've sold a lot of sneakers since then. All good things must come to an end, it seems. In this video, we're going to look at Nike's termination of Kyrie's deal and a few other athletes who were dropped by the Beaverton brand. First, what did Kyrie do to earn a ban? On the 29th of October, Kyrie tweeted an Amazon link completely out of the blue. The link would take his followers to the product page of Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up Black America, and you could tell by the name alone what sort of documentary this must be. Over the next few weeks, Kyrie's career began to fall apart.
He draws a second and healed, and that gives just enough space for Kyrie Irving to go right up the gut.
As you can imagine, the executives at both the NBA and Brooklyn Nets rushed to get in touch with Kyrie, urging him to delete the tweet and apologize for his actions. But not only did he take too long to do that, but Kyrie also had many opportunities to address the press and apologize for what he posted.
I think some of the criticism of the Jewish faith in the community, for sure. Some points made in there that were unfortunate.
Not only did he not do that, but he also tried to argue that it wasn't a big deal and defended himself and the documentary. At the time of this video, Kyrie is serving a suspension from the NBA. While the ban will last a minimum of 5 games, it'll actually go on indefinitely until Kyrie has taken enough remedial actions to convince the league and the team that they can let him back on the court.
You can't guard him one-on-one. Luka doesn't even see it till he's about to lay it up.
Nike at the time suspended their partnership with him, ceasing production and sale of his sneakers. That suspension could have been reversible, but it seems like Nike is cutting off the athlete for good. After all, this wasn't Kyrie's first controversy, though it may have been the worst one for now. Up next, we're gonna go through a few other athletes that got kicked off Nike's slate. It's not uncommon, unfortunately, for athletes to fly off the rails for one reason or another. Sometimes you end up platforming someone who's great at a sport but has problematic views. This would be the bucket Kyrie falls into. And sometimes someone from a humble background lets the fame and riches go straight to their head, and they start acting up. And there are even more sinister stories than that. Here are some athletes who Nike had to cut ties with because of their behavior. We'll begin with the disturbing story of Ray Rice. How's this for a place to start? In the 2014 offseason, the running back for the Baltimore Ravens became mired in controversy when a video hit the internet showing him beating up his fiancée. There was no denying that it was Rice in the footage, and his management began working with the NFL to do some damage control. Rice was on his way to prison, facing 3 to 5 years behind bars and a fine up to $15,000. He only managed to avoid the punishment because even as the scandal was unfolding, he married his fiancée and was able to get the charges dropped after agreeing to court-supervised counseling. Ultimately, Rice lost his spot on the Ravens and his deal with Nike. On top of that, he earned an indefinite suspension from the NFL, with Commissioner Roger Goodell conceding that he mishandled the whole scandal.
Josh is going through a process right now, and at some point in time, I may have an opportunity to be involved, and when I am.
He managed to overturn the suspension on appeal, so he's technically a free agent right now, but we doubt anyone's giving Rice a second shot anytime soon. We're going from bad to worse with Oscar Pistorius. You know, in an alternate universe or timeline, we might have been watching a feel-good biopic about Oscar Pistorius. Suffering from a congenital defect from birth, Pistorius had both of his feet amputated at just 11 months old. That didn't stop him from staring irony in the face, strapping on a pair of prosthetic blades, and becoming a splinter. At his peak, Pistorius was a dominant competitor in the special races, and he was a force to be reckoned with in the mainstream sport. And then he was accused of murdering his girlfriend on Valentine's Day in 2011. Nike had no hesitation about what to do when they saw the headline. They swiftly terminated their partnership with Pistorius, and as the athlete wound up in prison, they must have been glad they acted so fast.
The wolves, everybody wants a piece.
The O.J. Simpson of South Africa.
Pistorius was found innocent of premeditated murder, but he was ultimately convicted of culpable homicide. The next entry on the list is a lot less sensational than those. We speak of Lance Armstrong. Cycling isn't the most popular spectator sport in the world, but it says something about Armstrong that he's one of the more recognizable names on this list. By being one of the greatest riders to ever take off on 2 wheels, Armstrong elevated his sport into the mainstream. He also set unbelievable records and made a hobby of doing the impossible. And he went on to prove that anything is possible with the right cocktail of drugs.
Some patience, but it seems like there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
In 2022, Armstrong is synonymous with performance-enhancing drug scandals rather than his cycling ability. The discovery of his doping led to the loss of his career and integrity, and of course, his deal with Nike. It's time to venture back into the heart of darkness with Michael Vick. For some people, Vick might be the most disgusting and awful person on the whole list. While the athletes we've seen so far get the boot for one-off offenses, Vick was running an actual criminal enterprise that had, among other things, animal cruelty.
Vick was sentenced to 23 months in prison, and and ordered to pay just under $1 million in restitution for the care of the dogs.
An investigation of the star quarterback's properties led authorities to a dogfighting ring called Bad News Kennels. Vic and his clientele would force dogs to fight each other and bet on the outcome of the fights. There was also evidence of dogs being executed, including the bodies of many of the animals. Not only did Nike drop Vic in the wake of this scandal, but pretty much everyone did. Now, do you want to know the twist of this story is? Mike is actually a Nike athlete right now. In 2011, the company signed him on again, saying at the time that they do not condone his actions at the time, but he'd taken steps to improve himself off the field. We guess we'll have to take Nike's word for it. We'll move on to another doping scandal, this one surrounding Marion Jones. The career of track and field athlete Marion Jones was blown up by her association with the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, or BALCO. That's a pretty complicated and sciencey sounding name, but it was found that this was basically just a lab that made anabolic steroids for athletes. BALCO, you see, had found a way to manufacture performance-enhancing drugs that could pass the drug testing systems of the time. Even at the Olympic level, a number of athletes got caught up in the scandal, including Jones. Now, Nike didn't drop her in the way they dropped the other athletes on this list, but as Marion was banned from ever competing in her sport, Nike decided not to renew her contract when it expired in 2005. It's a more discreet way of cutting ties with someone, but the effect is the same. In fact, it's probable that Nike has done this more often than they do dramatic partnership terminations. What makes Marion's story worse is that her life completely fell apart after the end of her sports career.
Over the many years of my life, as an athlete in the sport of track and field.
7 years after the end of all her sponsorships, Marion was deep in debt and battling courts. The bank foreclosed on her $2.5 million mansion, and she was forced to sell off a number of her properties. She was later caught in a check counterfeiting scheme that earned her 6 months in jail. Capping off our list is another doping scandal involving an athlete, Justin Gatlin. Gatlin was a sprinter, and his trophy case includes a number of Olympic medals among other wins. In fact, he picked up a silver medal as recently as the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Olympics, but his career hit a massive stumbling block, that being a doping scandal in 2006. That year, Gatlin was handed a positive test by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, or USADA, but he claimed to be innocent in the matter. He was one of 8 athletes training with coach Trevor Graham, who'd been caught doping. Though Graham defended Gatlin by suggesting that he'd been sabotaged, he was given an 8-year ban from track and field. As for Nike, they suspended their deal with him and told the press that Gatlin was about to run out of their brand soon. They didn't follow through at the time, though, instead waiting for the deal to expire.
I think that I've earned the respect of my fans back to be able to come back and run strong.
What sets Gatlin apart from the other athletes on this list is that he made a comeback. After the 8-year suspension, he got back into shape and hit the track again. Nike has made up with him as well, though their sponsorship now is limited to training equipment. Who doesn't love a happy ending? That's it for today's video. Let us know in the comments section below what you think of the end of Kyrie's deal with Nike. Also, do you think there's a way for Kyrie to get back in the good graces of basketball fans again? But whatever you do, don't dope and run off without liking, sharing, and subscribing.